Hello and welcome. We are in Yerushalmi Berachos Daf Yud Daled in the Oz v'Hadar print, and I want to start off with a quick introduction. Today's blot has a lot of parallels in the Bavli itself, and we'll try to mention a few, and we'll do a quick thought on the blot itself. But I want to go global today because I keep promising this, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it. And there's a lot to say, but let's just start. The question is, what Mesechtos was the Bavli written on? What Mesechtos was the Yerushalmi written on? It sounds like a very simple question. So here's the thing. When we say that somebody finished Shas, so it's actually interesting. Usually it refers to Bavli, and it usually actually refers to Shas stands for Shisha Sidre, 6 Siddharim. Now, if somebody learns through Shas, they'll notice there's a couple of things. First of all, there's no Bavli on there's no Bavli on Mesechus Shekalim in all of Moed. So that's a problem. There's also no Bavli on all of Zeroim except for Berachos. So you have Berachos, and there's no Bavli on there. And there's no Bavli on any other Masechta in all of Peah, Demai, Kalayim, Shvias, Trumas, Masers, Maser, Sheni, Chala, or Labikurim. Nothing. There is Yerushalmi on those Masechtas, which we'll get to in a minute. So then there's a few other Masechtas in Kachim, and of course all of Taurus, except for Nida, has no Gemara Bavli. What seems to be is that there's something called the 36 Masechtas, which is Serafim Om Demimal Lo. There's a Kabbalistic concept of Lo is Lamed Vav, 36. Hanukkah's coming up. That's to do with the candles that are lit as well. If you do the math about how many lights are lit throughout Hanukkah, with day 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 till 8. So if you count the Shamash, there's other cheshbonos as well. But anyway, we'll save that for Hanukkah. So the point is that it seems to be pretty well accepted that the Masechtas we have in Bavli are complete, and that when somebody finishes Bavli, they've finished Bavli and they've done all of the Masechtas that have been written on. There was a movement after Daf Yomi, which started 101 years ago. Daf Yomi, by the way, in 1923. 99 years ago. So the cycle is about 7 years and 5 months for the Bavli cycle. And we're on the 14th cycle right now, so do the math. And it's 2,711 pages. Now, the Bromberg edition in the 1500s is kind of what established that Surah Sadaf, and it really makes it a lot easier. When you learn through Rishonim, they say, Beperik Arba Nizakim, or Beperik Shlitas, and it's a little bit confusing but they had no paginization, so it wasn't like you could say in that Masechta on this page, because everyone had different pages, but that parak made sense. You just kind of looked it up, but it led to a lot of misunderstandings as well, for people that didn't understand things. Imagine if the Rogatchover didn't have a Tzur Sadaf, how would he even write? In so many of his Mefarshim, it's all about just page, etc. Okay, so that's kind of the overview. Now, what I was mentioning before is that there was a movement of people that said, after the Daf Yomi was founded, about 50 years ago, from what I understand, that basically said, wait a minute, you're not really finishing Sisha Siddur Mishnah because you're skipping the Mishnayos. And so what they did is they filled in all the Mishnayos learning. If you're doing the Bavli cycle, then you should still be learning, you're doing Brachos which is the Mishnayos and the Gemara, but you're going to not learn Peah, Demai, Kalayim, Shvias, so learn all those Mishnayos that are missing, and Taurus, and they created a whole system of that. I haven't seen that so well used, but it definitely makes a lot of sense that if you're going to learn it, you should learn all the Mishnayos as well. In fact, Rashi in Sukkah, somewhere in the Daf Yud Beis or Yud Daled area over there, Ayin Sham. So it's a long Rashi, and he says it's on the Gemara of. It's funny, I could quote the parak. It's on the Gemara brings in that the Avos Hashem was this Avodah Tivilas and Shel Avos, and it's on that Gemara. The Gemara brings in a Masechta and Taurus. So Rashi says that the Gemara is Marach on Taurus topics in random places because there is no Gemara there, and therefore I wanted to take an opportunity to expound. So you see that clearly there was no Gemara in certain parts, which that's what Rashi's saying, and B, that it's important to learn these other parts. Okay, so what about Yerushalmi? So Yerushalmi is very interesting. First of all, there's the Vilna print, and there is the Oz v'Hadar print. Now, again, most people quote Yerushalmis as what parak and what halacha they're in. I heard somebody try to say ha'ara that Yerushalmi is more halachic focused. That's why it's called halacha instead of Mishnah. I haven't found it to be exactly true. Meaning, they say that the Bavli is 2/3 halacha and 1/3 agadata. I find that Yerushalmi has a lot of agadata. Now I understand that we're in Berachos, and Berachos does have a lot more agadata. I mean, it just like Bavli does. So, but I don't know. I don't know well enough whether that's true or not. But the ha'ara is an interesting ha'ara that it was very halacha focused, and it makes sense because That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to expound upon the Mishnah. Allegedly, when the original Yerushalmi was even printed, it actually didn't even have the Mishnayos in it. It just had kind of the Gemara, and somebody tried to add the Mishnayos later, so that also could have confused things. But the how things are printed and how they've developed is very important, because one of the challenges with the Yerushalmi is exactly how it formed. Anyway, so let's come back. So how many Mesechtos are in the Yerushalmi? So we know that we have all of Zeram in Yerushalmi, which a lot of people learn. Mesechtos Klein or Shvius are learned. So we have all of Zeram. In Moed, we know that we have Shkalim, and hopefully, that's a whole different discussion, the paginization and whether it was historically learned because the Bavli was missing Shkalim, or whether it wasn't, or whether the Yerushalmi that we have in Shkalim has been Bavelized, as they like to say, changed, etc. There's different prints of it. There's different versions. Hopefully, we'll get there when we get to Shkalim. There's a lot to say on that matter. But anyway, so suffice it to say, the question starts to become that we know we're missing things. For example, Mesechus Shabbos is missing large fragments. Clearly, it just ends in the middle. Mesechus Nida as well is missing most of it. So, and all of Kachim is missing or not. So that's the issue. We know for sure we don't have it now. Although I'll talk about that in a moment. That there was a time that people thought we did have it. But Rishonim do seem to quote Yerushalmi in Kachim, and we clearly don't have that. So, for example, in Bavli we have Zvachim, Menachos, Chulun, Bechor, Erech, Temura, etc. So we know that we're definitely missing that. So this kind of became the thing of, can you make a siyum on Yerushalmi? I've spoken this over with a lot of people, and again, hopefully we'll address it more. I mean, a lot of people feel that you can. It's what we have in front of us. It's what's Niskabel and Klal Yisrael. This is Yerushalmi. But we are definitely clearly what we have in front of us. This becomes more problematic. We clearly are missing parts of Shabbos, parts of Anita. Like I said, you just take a look, you'll see it's missing most of the Masechta, which is just really a big tragedy. Let me make one more note, and then we'll come to our page itself. There's a great article written by Rabbi Yosef Gavriel Bechafer, who really is someone that deserves a lot of credit for really bringing Yerushalmi out. I mean, I believe for a while he held the designation as the only Maggid Shir to ever have completed a Yerushalmi cycle and a Bavli cycle, which is amazing. I'm sure there are other people, but at least I know that about him to be true. And he wrote a very fascinating article about Talmud Yerushalmi on Kachim. You could Google it. It's pretty easily available on his website with all of his recordings on Yerushalmi as well. There's so many amazing resources of all Daf, and ArtScroll has resources now, and the OU, and many places. So anyway, basically in 1907, a mysterious person appeared, and he called himself Shlomo Yehuda El Ghazi Friedlander, Sephardi Tahar, right? And he basically started publishing things on Yerushalmi. And what's fascinating about it is that it's you could get this Yerushalmi, and it is published on HebrewBooks.org. It's there. I know they have a lot of controversial things on there, and I know there is a lot of thought that goes into what's there, and I understand why it's there. And the alleged story is that the Rogatchover rejected it, and the alleged story is that he said that every Masechta has one new name in it, and this one doesn't have that. And there's a lot of discussion in a lot of people whether this is true or not. There's a Rabbi Oberlander who actually wrote his PhD dissertation on Yerushalmi Kachim, and there's a Hebrew version, an English, and a I guess I'm not sure what language it is. The other one, my Google Translate didn't even work, but I read some of his Hebrew articles. They're very, very good. And basically, they don't deny the Rogatchover story, although they think it's not probable. And the reason is because if you look at Tzafnas Paneach, Parak Kuf Yud Gimel and onward, so he actually has other objections and problems with Yerushalmi, and he doesn't mention that one. And l'chora, that would be one that he should mention, which I think is a very good argument, unless that story happened later. But I also don't know it to be true. I would have loved to have heard if somebody asked Rav Chaim Kanievsky, that's all, or something about this exact matter, whether there is a new name. I know there's a very famous one where the Gemara at the end of Sota, I believe, says that when Rebbe died, Batal Anava, or whoever it was, I might have the wrong name, and he says, Va'ika Ana, but I'm here. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky said that he wasn't saying it's myself, although there are many Mefarshim that explain that. But Ika Ana, there was actually a Amora or Tana or Amora in the Yerushalmi, probably an Amora, whose name was sort of Ana. Anyway, so the Chavetz Chaim wrote a haskama to it, as did other people. Of course, the Chavetz Chaim, when this person was found to be a liar, did retract his haskama, as did many other people. But it was very convincing. And what he basically did was, and Rabbi Bechafer talks about this as well, he basically took all the Bavlis on that and put them into Yerushalmi styles, and all the other Yerushalmis that talked about it as well, which is really, really fascinating. And like Rabbi Bechover points out, he took some of the Hashmatos Yerushalmi where people quoted Yerushalmis throughout the years, so we never knew where they were, and he sprinkled those in also just to make it more interesting. So the guy was obviously brilliant, but absolutely a fraud and proved to be a fraud on many, many fronts. So there's a lot to say about that. The point that I'm trying to make is just that it's fascinating how Yerushalmi has developed and what we have in front of us, and it's just something to keep in mind. Let's come back to Daf Yud Dalet Amud Aleph, and hopefully we'll talk more about that as we go along. It's just interesting to know what we're doing. So one of the things that the Gemara says is that there was a parallel sugya in the Bavli as well, that a Kohen Gadol, so when we daven Shemona Esrei, we kind of moved on from Shema to Shemona Esrei. So when we daven Shemona Esrei, we bow right at the end of certain brachos, first bracha, last bracha modim. But the Yerushalmi and the Bavli both say that for a melech who's davening and for a Kohen Gadol that's davening, there's even more bowing that goes on. And that is, the Gemara says, that Rav Yitzchak bar Nachman b'shem Rav Yoshua ben Levi, he says, Kohen Gadol socheach al sof kol bracha bracha. He bows at the end of every single bracha. And the melech, Rosh kol bracha ubracha, at the beginning of every bracha, V'sof kol bracha ubracha, and at the end of every bracha. And Rav Simon, the Shem Rav Yoshua ben Levi, he says, Hamelech mishu korea eno niskav hachu mashgal tefillah. He goes down once and he stays down the whole time. And everybody quotes Rashi, who really sheds a lot of light to this. I haven't really heard any other good pshat, although I've tried to see other pshatim, and I'll try to add one today. But Rashi is really the authoritative figure here in Bavli, obviously. And Rashi there says that the more, the higher position you hold, the more prone you are to being haughty, and therefore the more you have to machnia yourself. So Kohen Gadol is a very, very prestigious position, so he needs to bow at the end of every single bracha. And the king, either according to one opinion, he needs to bow at the beginning and end, or he just needs to stay on the ground the entire time, and that's how they explain it. So that is a very, very important thing. So with that in mind, I wanted to add one quick thing, and that is I heard a pshat that says Chasan Doman LaMelech. So what's the pshat? He's a melech, and this is not one for Sheva Brachos, by the way. So it says, the Gemara says that a melech is judged every single day. Nidom Chol Yom. So there's an element, so that's why he fasts, because he's being judged. So it's that part. I don't want to make any jokes about that, about daily judgment as part of being a Chasan. So, because hopefully that's not the case. But the point is that if you think about it, the king is being judged every day because he's on that higher level. So I'm really following up with Rashi as well, and that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. All right, thanks for joining and have a great day.